Ah boy, and the wokeness. It just continues. So ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel, and in this episode, oh boy, we are certainly gonna hear some nonsense. That is for sure. Now recently, as I'm sure a lot of you know, news broke that the Olympics is set to ban male athletes from female events. Yes, finally the people over at the IOC have gained back some common sense and decided that it is actually unfair for women to compete against men. I know, it is absolutely shocking, we can't believe it. No one's ever said it before, have they? Now, new discovery apparently. But this news, as I'm sure all of you would imagine, and I actually made a video about it, sparked outrage from the woke left, because how dare the Olympics have actual women competing against each other? That is totally wrong. Oh boy, And on Piers Morgan Uncensored, this outrage, the debate, it continued with woke activists trying to defend the idea of men competing against women, and it's mean and hateful to talk about this issue in a normal way. Get a grip. And we have Blaire White on the panel, who absolutely destroys them. How in 2025 we are still having this conversation is beyond me. You know, I've said this before, when I was a kid, I actually thought in 2025 we'd have flying cars by now. I'm sure a lot of us did. But no, we are discussing male athletes in women's sports. We're heading in such a great place. You know, I'm excited for the future, as we all are. Now, before we get into it, ladies and gentlemen, and check out Blaire White absolutely roasting these woke liberals, if you could, as always, make sure to leave a like rating. If you're new, hit that subscribe button, turn on bell notifications so you never miss a video, share this video, and let's get into it.
Let me explain something to you. Serena Williams was asked publicly on television whether she could beat any of the top 1,000 men. I think John McEnroe had said it, and then she was asked whether she agreed that none of the top 1,000 men would lose against Serena Williams at her peak. So she's the greatest tennis player in female tennis history. She admitted that she would probably not beat any of the top 1,000 men players in the world. Right there, is the problem. Because Serena is a fantastically strong, powerful female
But we're not talking
tennis player
about men. We're
who's been
talking
the greatest
about
to ever play the game.
We're talking about other women, trans women.
We are. No, we're not. This is the problem, though. We're calling them women. They're trans women, and they're trans athletes.
But we aren't aware
Blair.
of when they transitioned or what their biology is, and that, I guess...
It doesn't matter.
It does, actually.
It doesn't matter.
The thing is,
their biology.
I think it
What
does
matters
matter. I think
is
that's
their
what
biology.
we're really talking about. It does matter. And
no, what matters is their biology.
Are you a
Blair?
Are you a doctor?
Dr. James Thornton was presented to the IOC.
Thing. I know more than the doctor, yes, about this.
Right,
yeah.
sure.
Okay, Piers did throw it to me, so if I could just say, 4th grade biology debunks trans women in women's sports, so the fact that the IOC even had to weigh in is actually really sad. I don't really know the argument that these other two on the panel are trying to make. Yes, there are biological differences from trans women and biological women because there are biological differences between men and women. And I feel like they're kind of playing in this game of like, they just don't want to admit it, but this is that like 80-20 issue, at least here in the States, that like it's ridiculous it's even being debated. And the fact is, it's not just a few things that differentiate men and women when it comes to puberty. It comes to heart size, lung size, bone density, overall size, height, lung capacity. It's such a long list. It's so thoroughly debunked. And frankly, you know, as a trans person on the panel, I'm so sick of these sorts of issues being pushed on to women, first of all, and also trans people. The last decade of these progressive policies that are supposedly meant to push society forward into a more inclusive society to help trans people have actually just turned trans people into this political football that no one, frankly, on this side that I know of asked for. But then you always have, and this is a perfect example, time after time on this panel, people who are not trans arguing for these policies that do nothing but enact backlash against trans people. And so it's kind of hard to understand where you guys are coming from. I know you're doing it in the name of like fairness and equality, and you want to fight for the underdog.
Can I tell you
I
where
think
I'm
you guys
coming
have
from?
it twisted who the underdog is, because if it's a woman versus a trans woman in a sport, the underdog is the woman.
Can I tell you where I'm coming from? Because I think that's a really valid point, and I appreciate it.
There we go.
I'm basically here because I genuinely believe that conversations like this are using trans people as a political football, and it's ridiculous and wrong. And actually, when we're talking about fairness in women's sport, we shouldn't be focusing on 0.0001% of trans women who compete in the Olympics. We should be talking about pay differences. We should be talking about the misogyny. We should be talking about the fact that one statistic said 65% of women in sport in the UK have been abused by cis men. That's what we should be talking about when it comes to women's safety in sport.
Apparently, we shouldn't be talking about the issue of men within women's sports because apparently, according to these people, it doesn't really happen. It's not that much of a big deal. And instead, we should be talking about pay because apparently these people seem to think women should be getting paid the same as men. That is not sustainable and it does not work. The reason why men get paid more is because more people watch it. There is more money within men's sport. If you made women get paid the same as men, it would be financially ridiculous. It wouldn't be sustainable whatsoever. And then they talk about misogyny. Isn't it misogynistic for a dude who thinks he's a woman to compete in women's sports and then take places, awards, opportunities away from other women and girls? And then we heard the point made about cis men. Why can't you just say men? There's no need for cis to be at the front of that, abusing women within their sports, which is a fair point to raise. That shouldn't be happening. But then you can't bring up that safety issue and then ignore the clear safety issue of allowing men into women's sports. We have seen men injure women within their sports. I have made so many videos covering women and girls getting hurt by these dudes because they're allowed to play in women's sports just because they identify as a woman. It shouldn't be going on. You can't sit there and say, oh yeah, we should care about women's safety within their sports, but then not talk about that. Now, if people actually cared about women's safety, like these liberals claim they do, there is no way they would allow dudes into women's sports. Plain and simple. But apparently to them, these dudes aren't dudes any longer just because they say out loud, oh, I identify as a woman now. Apparently then that gets rid of their biological advantages just saying a few words. What? These people make no sense whatsoever.
I'm merely having the conversation, and I'm saying when we have arguments and conversations like this, what we're doing, and I think we probably agree, to be honest, I think what happens is we get into this big argument about women's safety, but we're really missing the point is that these people are humans and it's affecting not really that many people that are.
Who's saying they're not humans, man? It's you that's missing the point.
Denies that they're humans, and I don't think the amount of people it affects. First of all, you guys have been saying the same thing, that it's almost virtually never happening since the beginning when it maybe was a lot more rare, but it's happening all over the world now, not just in the States, also in the UK, clearly. If it's happening at the Olympic level, that's international. So I feel like you guys hide behind, well, it's not that many people. But then if I bet if I brought up the topic of abortion, you're going to invoke the 0.5% of people who are 11 years old and by their father having a baby. That's what you'd like to make the example out of. So I don't think it matters how many people. And even it's still a lie that it's like almost no people. It's an ever-growing issue.
You know what? The reality is that a year ago, the United Nations came out with a report saying that nearly 1,000 medals had been deprived from biological females by trans athletes in sport at all levels in that year. And that's just completely wrong.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like it doesn't happen, right, with that stat. Never happens at all. Randomly, 900 medals, close to 1,000 have just gone missing because women haven't won them. Sounds totally fair to me, and it's not a big issue like these woke liberals like to make out. Oh, it's not really a thing, but there's barely any trans. Guess what? There shouldn't be one. There shouldn't be one. And Blaire White demonstrates some common sense here, some biological facts, and they completely ignore that. They completely ignore that. To me personally, man, it is just insane that people genuinely sit there and defend the idea of men competing in women's sports just because they're trans women. If people do that, I personally think, they shouldn't be listened to. You have no right to talk about this because you are clearly ignoring the truth. And when people can't even bring truth to an argument, that should disqualify you from these sort of arguments, man. Why should people entertain delusion? Why? Women shouldn't have to entertain delusion because of woke ideology. But it continues to happen. Again, these people will talk about women's safety and all of that stuff. But then when it comes to the safety issue of men within women's sports, women and girls getting injured, they don't want to talk about it. They suddenly act like Stevie Wonder. People should really put their foot down with this across the board. Every single sport, every single organization, they should say no men in women's sports at all. It's crazy that it took this long for the Olympics to even consider this, to even look at plans to ban male athletes from women's sports. These people are at the top when it comes to sports, right? It's the elite event. And yet they can't even put in place strict rules, normal rules. They can't even set the standards. It took them this long to do it. And then when this does happen, and when the news breaks, you get woke liberals who are so outraged about this. Oh, we can't believe it's happening. Oh, this should be allowed to go. Actually, this is very mean and hateful to talk about it in this way. All this stuff. Mate, at the end of the day, it's just plain and simple. Men and men's sports, women and women's sports. That is it. I do not care how somebody identifies. It shouldn't be controversial to say that. Are we still going to sit here next year, the year after, the year after, the year after, and talk about this issue? Are these woke liberals going to continue to cry about men being banned from women's sports? Oh, it's so mean. And then you wonder why people look at woke liberals and go, you are insane. You are insane. Because you defend fantasy, delusion. You defend the idea of men who can, on any given day, just put their hand up and say, yeah, you know what, I identify as a woman. And then not so long after that, they can go into women's sports. How we reach this point is just beyond me. We need to move past this issue. We really do. I mean, and these liberals need to accept the facts, the truth. But leave your thoughts down below, ladies and gentlemen. What are your thoughts on the trans athlete debate? Are you sick and tired of it, like I am? I'd like to know. If you have enjoyed, make sure to leave a like rating. If you're new, hit that subscribe button, turn on bell notifications so you never miss a video. Share this video. But until next time, it has been your host, JD. Have a great day, stay safe, and I'm out. Peace.